So before I start, though, I had a couple of housekeeping items that I wanted to answer. I had two questions that are outstanding. One was centered around doubles, so specifically with liquor, being able to do, say, a double Smirnoff as opposed to having to either ring up Smirnoff twice or actually having to enter it in the system as two different products, so a Smirnoff and then a double Smirnoff. Unfortunately, we don't have a way of multiplying an item, if you will. So what I would call a volume modifier, where I could hit, say, vodka and then hit a button that was set up as a modifier that doubled. So that would give me so I could use it against any item. But we unfortunately don't have that functionality. What you end up, the only option we have at this point is shift keys, where again you would have to go in and program in those doubles as single items. So for every alcohol style, you would create a second key that was a double key, and then you'd have one shift key that was a double that was linked. So you'd hit absolute double, and that would turn it into the double absolute. So unfortunately, we don't have the other functionality yet. The other one was about being able to use multiple feature codes, which personally I think is fabulous if I thought about it, but I double-checked, and unfortunately we can't. In product setup, you can only assign one feature code per product. So in the case where maybe we have a tax inclusive, plus we also want to keep it from being use the feature code that would not allow them to use a coupon against it as well, you can't do it. One feature code only. So those are two enhancements that if somebody wants to write up a request for. I think that would be excellent, and we can get those turned in and get them on the roadmap. All right. So that being said, that's not done for our housekeeping, so let's jump right in. We're going to get into inventory, which can be a very heavy topic. I'm only going to devote about an hour to it, because then we're going to go into cash management, which is also similar to inventory, which a lot of people don't seem to use it, but it's actually a really great tool. So we'll start off with inventory. So you have a drop-down menu, and you've got three options right out of the get-go: stock items, supplier, and warehouse. And then we have inventory at the bottom, which actually launches the actual program. But I'm going to take us through the menu here first. And I'm going to do that in order because, to me, you got to do the setup before you actually start getting into the guts of it. So the first thing you're going to want to do when you set up your inventory is you need to set up a warehouse. Now, the warehouses are where do you receive the inventory when it's delivered. Simple is better, gang. I'm going to just set that out there. Simple is better, but if you have to be a little more complicated, obviously you can be. But if you're your average everyday restaurant, you receive in one spot. But if you're a hotel, for instance, a lot of times they receive all inventory, not just for the restaurants, but for housekeeping, for administrative departments, et cetera, all in one central area. And then they dole them out to the respective business, inside of the hotel. So hotels tend to treat their different revenue centers as independent businesses. So my sports bar is its own business, separate from my fine dining, separate from my gift shop, separate from my cafe, separate from the housekeeping group. So it's sort of like a big, if you will, they treat their loading dock almost like a commissary where everything is received in, and then they transfer it out to the various revenue centers. So, again, using my hotel scenario, if I was in that environment, I would set up a warehouse. If that hotel, if that sports bar, they put in their own individual purchase orders. They didn't share it amongst the other restaurant entities. They didn't share it amongst the bar and the fine dining area, let's say. When I order Absolute vodka, I'm ordering it strictly just for my sports bar. Then I would consider the sports bar as its own warehouse because everything it brings in is only utilized in that sports bar. And then that is how you're going to gauge your food cost against it, as opposed to if they say the kitchens share. So if I have a situation where my kitchen shares everything that comes in, then you wouldn't want to break that out because, again, you don't know how much some of that chicken is going off to when, we're doing chicken tenders on the sports bar menu, and the other chicken is going off when they do cordon bleu in the fine dining restaurant. But if they truly are independently, all of their inventory items are independent of one another, then I would set up a warehouse for each of those independent revenue centers, if you will. If not, if everything is just one big glom and everybody just grabs from the same storage area, then just set up a general warehouse. So when you set up your warehouses, you obviously give it a name. You can give it a reference code if you so choose. That's an internal reporting thing. Contact information. Now you'll notice here copy address from company info. you can make this exactly the same as the company info that you set up in admin and system setup. So this is just, informational fields, including the email address. Now, again, I set up a few just for testing purposes, so you could see that you might have something different. Maybe they have a food warehouse and a bar warehouse, so that might be something that might be set up differently. So that's just, so you can see that there are differences. And again, what this relates to, inventory is based on stations. So when I bring up that peanut butter and jelly sandwich, what registers it rung up on will determine what warehouse it depletes from. So in station setup is where you attach what warehouse those items are pulled from. So again, if I'm in my sports bar, I've got 3 stations in my sports bar. Maybe my 2 bar registers pull all of their items from the bar warehouse. But the one station that the cocktail servers use or the floor servers use might pull their items from the general warehouse. I mean, it's just an idea. Typically, you're going to, again, if you do it by revenue centers, you're going to have the station that's in the room service department, and it's going to pull from where. You're going to have the stations that are in the sports bar, and they all pull from where. Again, that is if that's how they store all their inventory items. But again, it's station specific is where you set that up. And that is something, by the way, also, even if you're not using inventory in our system, you've got to create, you have to create a warehouse, and you have to assign it to every station. Otherwise, you will get POS errors when you try to load the front end. So even if you're not using inventory, you need to go into the warehouse setup and just create a generic warehouse and assign it to each register. That's a must. So you create your warehouse. Then also what you want to do is you want to create your suppliers. So this is where you add in everybody you buy stuff from. So your general tab is your basic information, their name, their address, your contact person, the phone number, fax number, and if they have an email address. You can also put in what your account number is with them, what your pay terms are. Is it net, 30? Is it net, 15? Is it COD? What is the default, if you will, shipping method? Are they privately shipped? Do they have their own shipping company? Or do they utilize UPS or FedEx? The owner gets in his car and delivers it. You can put that kind of information there as well. And you'll notice anytime you have your 3 dots is where you can, you're basically bringing yourself to a list that you've created. You can add the various different options in here, and you can select the various options in here depending on what your question is. Your advanced tab is about taxing. So again, raw items. So again, that case of chicken that we purchased or the case of vodka that we purchased, what taxes apply to them. And what that will do is that when you create a purchase order, if you chose to use that functionality, when you order those items, it will automatically apply those taxes to that item. So when your purchase order has a fairly accurate pricing already set, so you're not shocked that your order went up by $50 because of all the taxes that were added onto it. Okay. The other thing you have in here is show linked inventory items, which I love this feature. If you click on it, it's going to show you any raw ingredient items that you already have set up that are attached to this particular supplier, so that it's almost looking at their purchasing order list. What is their list? And then you can make sure that you have everything. And obviously, if you have a huge, purchasing order list, you can search by its name, and also every single stock item that we put in, you can also put a reference code in, because typically, again, on those purchase order lists, they have, individual special product codes, and you can put them in as well. It makes it a lot easier for searching items, and you're matching up your order guides as well. So you basically consider this as your online ordering guide, so you can make sure that you have everything in there. Okay, so that is your suppliers. So once you do that, then you want to get into the stock items. This is where you actually input all the different items that you buy and all the different ingredients that you need in order to make the various recipes that are on your menu. So going through this, we have description. What do you want to call it? Unit container, or unit description, container description, and packaging description. Unit container is what you recipe by. When you build your recipes, what is think of it as what's the lowest denominator that you're going to use for that item, the lowest piece of it, if you will. So in the case of my chicken breast, I utilize it by the piece. My recipes are by the piece. Some things, eggs, they're by the each. Mashed potatoes, I'm doing by the ounce. Mayonnaise by the ounce, etc. So what is the lowest recipe unit that you will count the item or use the item by? Then you have container size. Well, so for mayonnaise, we use it by the ounce, and that's contained within a jar. Or if I'm doing the chicken, maybe it's a piece and it's in a bag or a box, etc. So what is that, the next level size-wise that you're going to pull that unit item out of? Packaging description. How do you purchase it? So typically when you buy something, maybe you buy it in a box, you buy it by the case, or you buy it by the crate, etc. So for instance, for eggs, you're going to use them by the each egg, and they are contained within a carton. And when you order eggs, you typically order it by a crate. So you're bringing yourself from the highest level to the lowest level. And then related over here to the right-hand side is the relationship between. So for instance, my eggs each, so for each, so basically look at this relationship, each to carton. There are 24 eggs per carton is what we're saying here. And then the next slide is there's 12 cartons per crate. So again, what are the different levels of measurement that you're going with? And this is where we put the math in for it. Now you'll see some things like for my chicken breast, it's by the piece, they're within a bag, and the bags are in boxes. So there are 8 pieces to a bag, and there are 8 bags to a box. So you'll notice this is grayed out. Once you've entered the items in, and once you receive purchase orders in, if that's where you're going with your items, then it reads that information off of the ordering guide that you put in. But when you first create, when you're first adding an item, all those fields are wide open, so that's when you do the math. And this is important that you get the math right, otherwise your inventory is going to be completely off. All right, our next option over here is price per box. We're going to have you price it out by the largest unit, which is typically what you order it by. And again, that's not saying you have to. I just want to make that clear. Depending on your purveyor, if they will allow you to break things down. So for instance, back to my eggs. So maybe we normally order them by the crate, but it's a slow month for eggs for whatever reason, and they'll allow you to order by the carton. Again, we want you to put in what is that base price. So let's say for a carton of eggs, I paid $35. Oh. Come on. There we go. So then that's going to bring it down to the lowest price. So I'm basically paying 12 cents per egg. And it let me edit this one because I have not inventoried this item yet. I haven't received a purchase order for it, so that's why I'm allowed to go in and make these adjustments. Once you receive that, then it's going to lock itself into what's on those purchase orders. Okay? Categories. So I got a little ahead of myself. So report categories. Report categories are just like we do with the product setup, but what you tend to want to do, I strongly recommend that you also create special report categories for your inventory. And I always put a letter X or Z in front of mine so they float to the bottom of the list so I don't confuse my product item report categories from my inventory item report categories. And this again, you're looking at raw ingredients. So from POS, you want to track appetizer sales and entree sales. You're not tracking dairy. When I'm tracking raw ingredients, I want to track, the bulk items. So, I'm tracking all my dairy products. I'm tracking maybe all my meat products as one. Or maybe I break it down to all my poultry versus my steak versus my seafood. I'm tracking condiments, like mayonnaise and ketchup. Maybe I call them sauces. Some places just call them condiments. I'm going to track my paper supplies. So all restaurants need paper. You need, some of them, they'll do wax papers. They'll do paper, toothpicks, excuse me. Things of that nature, kitchen supplies like hairnets and gloves. So all of those, if you look on also the order guides, a lot of restaurants will follow the structure of the order guides because that's kind of how the order guides are broken down as well. So that's where that comes in. And you go in and you set those up in product setup in the report category area, the same as we set them up for products. Okay? Reference number is, again, you can put in that product ID. Based on your ordering guide. I think it's a great way to track it. Again, that's more of a reporting piece, but it's a tracking piece. Reorder levels versus par levels. So this goes with if you want to use the auto-populated purchase orders. The system will refer to these numbers, whatever you put in here, and that's how they'll generate a purchase order for you based on what the par inventory, what the inventory in the house the system thinks it has, it will match it up to what you put here. So basically, we're saying that we need to reorder when we get down to 80 eggs, and our preferred par level is 500. So then that's when the system sees that we're down to, when we hit 79 eggs, it's going to, if you generate an auto purchase order, it's then going to say, aha, add to it 50 eggs, because we hit 79. Once we hit 80, it's going to automatically add that to it, and that's the amount it's going to want to order for you. And it's going to say, we've defaulted this by the crate, but notice we could change our default ordering mechanism. I could change it and say, I don't want to order it by the crate. Maybe this is by the carton. And again, you want to reflect these numbers based on which one of these ordering units, if you will, that you've selected. Okay. And again, that is something you might change. You got to think in terms of summer through winter. So maybe in the summertime in a restaurant, you order watermelon by the case because you go through them in the summertime. But then when you get to winter, maybe you drop that down to by the each. And then you readjust your par levels, if you will. Okay? Yield is how much of this product will I actually be able to use in my recipe? Is there any waste involved? A lot of places don't like dealing with it here. They'll just put everything in as 100%. Other places will average it out. So say, for instance, when you're talking chicken, they purchase whole chickens. And maybe what they choose to do is they cut up the chicken into pieces. So there's always some waste. You're not yielding 100% of that chicken to put into your recipe. Maybe you only average out about 90% of the chicken that actually goes into recipe. The system will take that in consideration when it's calculating how much you should have on hand. Now that's one way of doing it, is by putting your yields in as percentages. Others like to set it up and use our waste and spillage to make those types of adjustments. It's a completely personal thing at each location. And some just assume it. They put everything in as 100%, and they just assume that there's loss. If it's an invisible loss that they don't bother with. Okay. Auto order. So again, this goes back to over here with our reorder levels. Auto ordering. How are we going to auto ordering? So when the system comes up and gives me a number, and maybe I've got something in decimal points, am I going to round up or am I going to round down? So for instance here, on order, so in this box is showing me what I have on order right now. So right now I'm waiting to receive a purchase order. I've ordered 1,872 eggs, which, forgive me, that equates to 1,872 divided by 12 cartons of eggs, which is a case. So I'm on hold right now for a case of eggs. If my numbers were in the middle of things, so maybe I'm not at 12, maybe I was at 10. Do I round up to bring me to 12, or do I round down to the next integer? So again, if this was, say, my numbers were off and they came to a case and a half, or a carton and a half needed to be ordered, would I round it up to just a carton or a case of a crate, excuse me, of eggs, or would I round it up to 2 crates of eggs? So that's what the rounding up and down do. And partial would allow you to do the 1.5. It would take it into, whatever that partial number ended up being. And again, that is just, again, that is default if you're using the auto ordering functionality. Again, but when you actually create your purchase orders, you can go in and you can adjust those numbers. Okay, here you're seeing suppliers. So who do I normally order these items by? So in my argument here, I get them from 2 different suppliers. I can get them from ABC suppliers or XYZ suppliers. And notice when I click on each of the suppliers, the information at the bottom of my screen represents that supplier. So instead of me having to leave this screen, go to my warehouse or my supplier screen and find all my information. And the main information I want is this. I want to call Jordan at this phone number. Here's my account number. I want to find out from him what is the current price for eggs right now, and can I get just a half a crate? Can I get 6 cartons instead of 12? Because maybe that's going to determine who I order from this particular time out of the gate. You'll notice, though, you do have to pick who is your primary supplier. So when you do, if you create an auto purchase order, we are going to default it to that primary supplier when we decide we need eggs. So there's that as well. Okay, and then over here is where you can add another supplier if you so choose. So you got a new guy on the block, and there's a neighborhood kid, and they have fresh chickens, and now you're maybe going to experiment with getting fresh chickens from the local, or fresh eggs from the local farmer. So you might want to add him into the list as well. Okay? Advanced. Advanced is where we decide how we're going to deplete this out of inventory. How do I use this? When do I take it out of inventory, if you will? So the common method is by recipe, whenever the item is rung up. So when I ring up my egg salad sandwich, I go and then I deplete. I take this much out of my eggs, I take this much out of my mayonnaise, my bread, whatever else I've included in that recipe. Okay? The other option is by customer. So for every customer that I ring through my system based on my customer count, that is when it will take it out of inventory. So that might be something like maybe when you present guest checks, you provide an Andes Mint to every customer. So that might be something where you might set that particular item up. So every time customer count is rung up on the system, it automatically takes out an Andes Mint for every customer on that ticket. By check, maybe by check you provide something, a balloon, you know, a souvenir book or something to that effect. And again, so for every check that is rung up, you automatically deplete that item because you're assuming that they've gotten one of each. Okay. Then our other option is by day. Something by day. Maybe toothpicks. You determine that you use X number of toothpicks each day based on an average. And so that's how you want to deplete it. By employee list. Now this will come into place like I was talking about with the hairnets and the gloves. So maybe you're going to deplete it by employee shift. So for every employee that comes in, I assume that I'm going to deplete a hairnet for each individual employee. Or I assume, you know, 2 pairs of gloves for each employee. So that would be the different ways that you would deplete an item out of inventory. Standardly, when it comes to actual products on a menu, per se, you normally typically would do that by recipe. Okay, depletes when. So depletes when exists in all warehouses, and sales type is all sales types. So again, here you can say which warehouse this particular product exists in, so we know which one we're going to pull it out of. And then when does it come out? Is it for all sales types, or is it only for specific sales types? So maybe in your sports bar you have something that's very unique to just the sports bar, and it only gets sold in that area. So you only want it to be depleted when it's rung up in that area. Or maybe, and sometimes maybe they do use it in other places, but again, you're looking for the general that I only want it deleted, say for instance, during my delivery. So maybe bags and things like that. Maybe you have special bags, shopping bags that you put the food in for delivery only. So you only want to delete that particular product item when it's rung up in the delivery department. Okay, over through here, again, tax setup. So the other tax setup was where we basically do it on suppliers. Here's where you can be very specific against each product. So this comes in handy a lot, say, with liquor. So if you're in an area where they do charge a separate liquor tax from a state tax, or if you're in an area where a lot of counties will charge a certain tax, like out here, I live outside of Chicago. If you are within a 3-mile radius now of downtown, our Navy Pier, there is what they call a bag tax. So it is basically a tax to help with garbage because of all of the extra garbage that's created with the street vendors and the paper and people, you know, walking along the street eating a hot dog and things of that nature. So you may have a situation where this particular product is applicable to that tax or it's not applicable to that tax. Again, that will affect whether you're using auto PO, order ads, or doing it manually. Okay. Weight of each. So this is about liquor. So this is where they use, some restaurants do this, where, you know, once a week they inventory liquor. Sometimes they do it once a night. And instead of having their bartenders eyeball, and I think there's a half a bottle left, I think that might be a quarter of a bottle left, they literally weigh the bottles. So what you would do, and let's see, I know I have a vodka in here. They literally determine what is the weight of an ounce, how much literally does an ounce weigh, what is the tar weight, what does an empty bottle weigh. So that way when they put it on the scale, it will deduct that. It will say, aha, you know, the weight on this is 6, so that must be, you know, times 2 is 12 ounces. So it understands how much there is, and it will deduct whatever the empty bottle is from that number. Okay? Employee price by ounce. So again, this is bartenders. So my owner is tired of all the spillage. We've got bartenders that are playing the, you know, the cocktail game, and they're flipping bottles around, and there's a lot of waste. So I'm going to start charging my employees for the spillage. How much am I charging them per ounce to account for any spillage? Basically is what that does. Prep location and prep days. This is basically for catering. It's how long, where do you prep something? So let's say chicken, and this could be in a general restaurant too. You know, our chicken is frozen. So how many days does it take to prep it? So I need to pull it out, and I need to defrost it. I need to take it out of the freezer, and if I'm doing it based on health laws, I'm moving it into a refrigeration unit. How many days in that refrigeration unit does it take for my chicken to defrost? And if I'm prepping it myself, so I'm doing whole chickens and I'm cutting it up into pieces by myself, how many days does it take to cut up that piece of chicken? So that's where you put in your prep time. And what that affects is when we give you your ideal food and we're telling you how much you should have in inventory, it's that delay between when we take it out of inventory because we're prepping it and before we put it into production to actually be utilized in recipes. Is kind of where that falls into. And that's where the prep days is. Okay, so the location is where we're putting it, and there's a place where you can define what your locations are. And then how many days does it take to actually get that chicken from the time I took it out of inventory until the time I put it back into rotation for recipe. Okay? Location and level. So again, this has to do with your warehouses. So in each warehouse, so if you have an item that's in multiple warehouses, and this is utilized if you're transferring products from one warehouse to another warehouse, how much is in each warehouse, or what warehouses are they in, excuse me, and how much is in each warehouse. And then you'll notice you have your reorder units and your part levels, which is exactly the same as what we have here. So if, again, I have a big commissary, that they want to put the commissary in there, and they transfer everything. So maybe I have my commissary warehouse, and then I have my restaurant warehouse. So I pull from the commissary warehouse into my restaurant warehouse. This is supposed to, as long as you can, now mind you, you guys have to take inventory at both locations to account for, aha, I have 50 pounds of, or let's say vodka. I've got 10 cases of vodka sitting in my commissary warehouse. So, and I only have 3 bottles in my restaurant warehouse, so I want to transfer in X amount. And again, you set up what your order levels are. When this gets to this, then you reorder. When my bar gets to a certain level, you reorder. Okay? Sub-recipes. Sub-recipes are things that you make in-house. So my example of egg salad. I would create an egg salad item because I make that in-house. It's already prepped. I've already cut the eggs up. I've mixed in the mayonnaise. If I use relish, salt and pepper, paprika, whatever special spices and stuff like that, you are making that in-house. You're not buying it. So here is where you would create that recipe for everything in there, and also what size. Typically, you're not going to make a single order of egg salad. You're going to make, you know, maybe you're making 3 pounds of egg salad. Whatever your typical batch size is, if you will, that you would make, and then that's where you dole out. Think of egg salad, coleslaw, sauces, anything that's made inside where you're going to use some of those raw stock items that you're purchasing to produce another product. And that is a product that you will recipe, because maybe when they order a hamburger, they one of their side options is egg salad or potato salad. It just reminded me I have potato salad in here. So you're going to add that to the plate, and in the recipe for, you know, the potato salad product item that they can ring, you're going to put it's 3 ounces of potato salad. So for instance, here's my potato salad stock item. So I've called it potato salad. We measure it by the ounce. We mix it in a bowl, and we make a batch of it. There are 40 ounces in a bowl, and there are 4 bowls to a batch. I'm not sure if you can see those numbers, but that's what they say, guys. And normally I should, once we populate everything, there would be a price here that would auto-populate. Advanced, we're going to deplete this by the recipe. Sub-recipe is I'm using 50 ounces of potatoes, and I'm using 9 ounces of mayonnaise is what goes into that batch. And for this batch, it cost me $22. And again, that is 40 ounces in a bowl times 4. So it's 120 ounces of potato salad. That is $22 is the cost, which is a little on the high side, but the numbers are kind of goofy, guys. Okay? So that's what a sub-recipe is. Now, there are 2 types of sub-recipes. You'll notice here we've got batch and nested. I always think of batch, again, as something you make. Potato salad, coleslaw, marinara sauce if you make it from scratch. So that is, again, a product that you're making into something. You're taking raw ingredients and you're making it into something else. Nested recipes are inventory items that you're not going to change them at all, but they are something that's a part of. So I, in the past, have always used them as, a great example is condiments. So my burger joint, every burger, no matter what, on the side of the basket gets a slice of lettuce, a slice of tomato, green onion, or a red onion, pickle. There'll always be 2 toothpicks. Maybe there's always an olive. I did a restaurant, they always put olives on top of everything they did. I also want to accommodate for the wax paper that the items are sitting on top of. And if I use the cardboard boats, I want to accommodate for that. So what you can do is you can build a nested recipe for all of that. And then when you build your sandwiches, any one of your burgers, you know, chicken sandwich, barbecue sandwich, buffalo sandwich, in that recipe, you would then include that, I called it a condiment pack. On that. So then in that individual recipe, you didn't have to go in there and add and subtract all that for every one of those recipes. And if you ever changed that condiment pack, you could come in here and change the sub-recipe of it. So maybe you're no longer going to put red onion in it because onions got incredibly expensive. And so people only get red onions if they ask for it. Or you're getting rid of the trademark olive. So then you can just make that adjustment once instead of having to go to every one of your individual sandwiches. Another time that I find it works really well is when I'm doing Mexican restaurants. Your average taco is always going to be the tortilla. There's X amount of lettuce. There's you know, a 2-ounce scoop of guacamole, a 2-ounce scoop of sour cream, 2-ounce scoop of pico de gallo. That's just standard. So I might make a nested recipe with those ingredients and assign that to every one of my tacos. So then when I actually build my chicken taco, my steak taco, etc., I would use my taco setup, is what I would call it, and then all I had to do to that recipe was add the appropriate amount of steak or chicken or pork, etc. Okay? So that's the difference between a batch and a nested recipe. How to make is just that, instructions on how to make the item. Now this is more, I guess, for front of the house. So again, the server, if the customer is like, can you tell me if there's relish in your potato salad? And maybe the kitchen's not speaking to them for whatever reason, so they don't want to go ask the question. So they can go to the system and hit the How to Make button, and that information will show up. Okay? I don't necessarily find this useful for the kitchen staff because your prep guy who maybe doesn't remember his recipe, first of all, he should have his book, but if he doesn't, he's not going to go out to a point-of-sale system and pull up that recipe so he can see what he's supposed to be making. And I doubt very much they're going to give him access to the back office system. And just like we have for employee setup and for product setup, you can also set up a user definable. So, for instance, we put a choice in here of food color. What is the food color on this white or green? What is the temperature? Is this a hot item or a cold item? So stuff along those lines. Now, again, this is just strictly for reporting, and it's strictly back here. It doesn't affect the final product in any way, shape, or form. All right, so that's setting up all your stock items. So once you have your stock items set up, then what you do is you go to your products. And then you create in your products, let's see. Let's say for my pasta plate, we're going to put it in here. So my pasta plate, for reasons unbeknownst to any of us, includes some potato salad. And it's going to get 3 ounces of potato salad. Okay, so then you're adding your recipe to each of the individual items. And again, notice here that my recipe cost is not populating yet because I haven't received any of this information yet. I have not put in a cost. But if I were to go back to stock item and go back to my potato salad, and let's say for each batch it costs me, I've determined, especially if I'm going to include labor in that, you never know, they might want to do that, $15. I don't know why I always hit the wrong button on that. 15. I'm just having decimal point issues, folks, sorry. There we go. So I'm saying it cost me under 9 cents per ounce to make that. Oh. Cancel, yes. What happened to my existing potato salad? Well, I'm not sure. There we go. Save. Okay. It's being a little hinky. I apologize for that. I'm not sure. I might have hit a key accidentally. So let's go back to that pasta. So now if I go into the recipe, I'm seeing now that just based on that one item, the cost of this is 28 cents. And there's my percentage of cost of the pricing. This is based off pricing. So right now it's saying that it only cost me 4.7% of my overall price to make this product. As you add your individual items, it's telling you basically how much does it make you, how much does it cost you to make that item. And you'll notice we'll give you a suggested retail price. Now again, your percentage point, you can affect that any way you want. You know, how much do you want to make off of this? Notice how when I slide my percentage bar, it changes what my suggested price is for this. So you can play with that. That will help you determine what, if you want to do a menu increase or whatnot. And again, keep in mind as raw ingredient prices change, every once in a while you want to come in and double check just to make sure that you're not losing money when you're selling something. So if you're selling your lobster for 30 bucks a plate, but lobster prices have skyrocketed and now you're paying almost 15 bucks per lobster, that maybe doesn't hit where you want your markup to be. Okay? That right there is what we would call basic inventory. That is simple inventory. That is not using purchase orders. That's just setting up stock items and recipes to determine what your cost is. And yes, you can do counts and things of that nature, but it's going to be more so of just kind of an eyeball count to determine ordering, because if you're not going to receive purchase orders, the system has no way of knowing how much you brought in. We can just tell you how much you took out, basically. That's simple inventory. Now, if you want to get into a little bit more complex inventory, or what we call full inventory, you need to use our additional executable called StockBoy. So that will literally count everything. As every item is rung up, it will tally up how much was rung up, and it will deduct that from your inventory, and every purchase order you put through the system, it'll add all those items back to inventory. And that's when you can start getting variances, and you're getting actual versus theoretical inventories, and you can get your actual versus theoretical food costs going on. So to activate that portion of the process, and this you do need the professional seat license for, first thing we're going to do is go into System Setup, and we're going to say we're going to use the Inventory Manager. We're going to say we are using that piece of functionality. Okay. Then in your PixelPoint POS folder, there are two executables. Two. So the first one is the StockBoy Manager. This is the apparatus that we've just told the system we are going to use. So what you would do is you would set that up and have it in your POS startup or have it in the Windows startup folder, have it anywhere you want it in order for it to actually turn itself on. So I'm just going to double click on it, and you'll notice now here I have a new icon in my taskbar, the little building squares. So if I double click on him, you'll see where this is at. So right now, you'll notice there's an item here for hold depletion processing. So you see how it says StockBoy is working? And it is telling me that my depletion is on hold since, because I was playing around with this. So I can see that that is on right there. Now this depletion, what is that for? And there are 3 different places you can actually turn that on, which is why it's on right now, even though it's not checked here. It is when you are ready to take an actual physical count. And if you're doing it during business days, during business hours, so while you're counting, orders are being rung up, and it's being pulled out. So your inventory is going to be wrong. If you don't stop the depletion from happening, you already passed the chicken. So you already have your numbers for what you have for chicken, but yet, 5 chicken sandwiches came in the door and were ordered. Now your numbers are wrong. By hitting the depletion, you're stopping the depletion from the inventory, so your numbers are right. And then after you process your variance, and you get all the numbers in, you turn on StockBoy again, you take depletion off of hold, and then it will then go and say, okay, now we're depleting those 5 chicken sandwiches. Now, some places they do massive inventories, and it can take them up to 2 days to get the inventory accomplished. So this is definitely something that they want to do, is deplete it, otherwise their numbers will never match right. Setup. So this is about costing. So calculate inventory. Are we doing average cost or last cost? Average cost is going to take the average of what you've paid over amount of time. So it looks at how old some stuff has been in your inventory and new stuff that's come in, and it averages out the cost, and it does a weight average on it to basically say that on average you're paying $2.19 per pound for chicken. Maybe you paid $1.99 a month ago, which you still have some of that, which I hope not, but you might. And then recently you paid, $2.75 as recently as a week ago. So it's going to take a mean average of that range between all that. The other option is to go last cost. Whatever you last paid for that is what the value that is assigned to the inventory. Okay. Our next options are a couple of flag settings. Disregard negative levels when receiving. So this is kind of an odd situation. So you got your order in, it's sitting out on the dock, and you haven't had time to put it away. In the meantime, the restaurant's going crazy, and you're selling, and you've run out of something, even though you know it's in your order. You just haven't received it into inventory yet. If this is not checked, if we don't disregard it, what's going to happen is, say for my chicken sandwich, I'm out of bread, but yet I'm still selling my chicken sandwiches. So I've gone into my order, and I've broken out the bread, and I've used up, by the time I actually can receive my PO, I've actually already used up an entire loaf of bread. So I'm at a negative right now. So when you actually receive it, it's going to offset your numbers so that it's not really going to record properly. If we say disregard the negative, what will happen as soon as the system comes down to 0, when it thinks that you're completely out of bread, it doesn't go into the negative, it just stays at 0. And then it allows you to receive in that stock and adjust the numbers accordingly. Okay? Automatically resumes stock depletion after processing variance. So if I'm the type that I do my inventory all at one time, I don't stretch it over for days, I don't do partial inventory, I don't go in and just do my cooler now and then I'll come back, or maybe you do, but once I process the variance, then I'm going to turn StockBoy back on. And I'm going to say, okay, you're back up again, and go ahead and start depleting again. So it just depends on how they handle their inventory. Once, and if they automatically want the stock depletion to kick back on again once the inventory is processed. Some people don't like doing that because maybe they realize that there's a huge error and they want to go back and fix it and then reprocess again. Use hold depletion date as the end date for the stock take. So when you're running your reports and you want to see what the end date, when was your inventory cut off? Some people do it biweekly, some do it based on the calendar month. So I wanted to show that the end date was, if it was a month where there's 30 days in the year, like say July, so there's 31 days. I wanted to show that it was on July 31st, that was my end stock date. Well, if it takes me 3 days to do my inventory, and I've set up hold depletion, am I going to count that day now as, say, the 29th when I started the inventory, or am I going to count my end day as of the 31st? When I actually finished my inventory, processed it, and then turned StockBoy back on. So it's just about reporting and what the numbers look like. Okay, so that's the setup of StockBoy. And then we're just going to let him run down there. So we're going to go back into back office. So we've covered these three. Now let's get into the main inventory area. So everything we've done so far, we can do in here. So you'll notice I have my drop-down menus up top, and I have a couple of icons here, and this is the same as out in the main back office setup where you can customize your toolbar and which one of these functionalities do you want on here. We do have another area where it's almost like a search. So ask the inventory manager for. Now this relates specifically to purchase orders. This is all about searching for purchase orders. So but going back through here, we have manager, and we're going to go to our options tab. So our manager option tab is about our purchase orders. Allow back orders. Do we allow back orders in our system, yes or no? Some places, and they work this out with their supplier, if something's on back order, that just means cancel it off the order, and I'll reorder it at a later date. I don't want you to tell me that, a case of eggs is on back order, and then all of a sudden 2 weeks later you show up with that case, and I totally forgot about it. So I went down to the local farm kid, and I already bought eggs from him, so now I have a ton of eggs. So maybe you do or don't allow back orders. Auto-receive purchase orders, yes or no? Will you allow the option for them to auto-receive the order, meaning that we're assuming that everything we ordered is exactly everything that we got? Or do you want to disable that functionality? Only shows supplier items. So when I'm pulling up my suppliers to create my purchase orders, do I only want to see the items that I've associated with that supplier, or do I want the ability to see all of the items that are within all my stock items? Now this is the default. There is a way when you're in your when you're putting in your purchase orders that you can tell it that you also want to see everything, even though you are in supplier A, B, C to E. Again, these are just defaults. Calculate suggested order quantity. Do I want the system, based on those par levels and those reorder levels that I've entered in my stock setup, to generate those suggestions for me, yes or no? Okay. All right, then we have restart, so restart inventory depletion. This is one of the options where I had turned on inventory depletion. And this is why it's not showing up in StockBoy, because this is exactly where I had set it off. So if I go ahead and click on him right now to restart it, now you'll see it change. It's toggled over to now pause inventory depletion. So that's another way. And if I come into my StockBoy application now, come on, you should come off. Working, working, working. It'll eventually catch itself up. See, now it's working. So now it gets off of inventory depletion, and anything that's being rung up will start depleting again. So that's your toggle function. It's your second area where you can turn it on or turn it off. Purchase orders. And again, everything that's in the drop-down, we've also obviously put buttons here on your main tab so that you can have shortcuts. New purchase order, creating a new purchase order. So if I want to create a new purchase order, I'm just going to click purchase, new. And I'm going to drop down my list for my supplier, pick who I want to order from. What warehouse do I want this going into? So I'm going to say I want this to go into my main. So now you'll notice that here's all of the information I have about that supplier. Here's the information about where that warehouse is located, the default shipping that we had set up for that particular supplier. Also over here is our enter date and the time that we're putting it in, reference code if we're going to give it a reference code. What are the cash terms? Again, this is the default. I can change it if for whatever reason this order is different. I'm in an emergency. I absolutely desperately need a crate of eggs. And the owner literally is going to put it in his car and bring it over. How am I going to pay for that? Ship date. When do I want this delivered by? So today is the 5th. I'm ordering on the 5th. But maybe I don't really, actually, I can't expect to get this until the 6th. And what is my ship time? So you can adjust all that as well. So now to actually add to this, I'm just going to hit add, or I can hit F4. And now what this is going to do is this is bringing up all of the items that are associated to the supplier. Again, my order guide. Basically, you're creating your order guide. Here's the option, though. This is the default because that's what we set up over in Manager. But show all supplier items. So I can click that, and it's going to show me everything. So it shows me it shows me every item in my list, and it shows me other suppliers that are also offering that product. Okay. So that's where you have your option to sort by, okay? Show primary items only, so that again is which one is the primary for this particular supplier. So here I can go ahead and you can do multi-selection here. So I can say I need some chicken breasts and I need some mayo. So all I'm doing is just left-clicking on each of them. I'm not having to hit a control key or anything along those lines. And then I can click OK. So now that is adding to my purchase order. There's my purchase order. The reference number, the items. This is the typical, because I have auto order on, the typical one box. I don't have a cost for my chicken breast because I haven't received them ever, but I do have a cost for my mayo because I put it in. What each line costs, what tax is applied. By default, I set chicken breast up to have a tax code 2, and I have no tax on mayonnaise. Active is that item active. So maybe here I've called him to find out how much are you charging me for this. Now I can fill in the price if I so choose, or I can wait until the PO is received and the system will automatically update the price there. But I'm going to say he's charging me $2.09 each. Well, that doesn't make sense because I'm doing it by the box. Never mind. Case of chicken breast might be, let's just say it's $39.99. Okay, so now you'll see my subtotal. If I have tax, I don't have any tax rate set up. Even though I have tax here, I don't have a tax rate on it. And then what it actually should cost me, it gives me my total cost. Your options here, you can put a comment in. If there's something special you want to write about, there's something unique about this. I can print this. So options for print, you can preview it, which is going to bring it up on your screen. So you kind of look it over, and that is what the printed PO would look like. So if they want to print their orders and they put them in a special, purchase order book, so that it's a way of communicating to all of the managers. Everybody can see what was ordered, when and why. To the actual physical printer that's attached, again, that would be a report printer, an 80-column printer. Or send to, you have the option, and I did not right-click, guys. All I did was left-click on this button to send this to a PDA file or to a Word file or HTML file. You will also use this functionality if you are going to be working with the order interface. I know there's a couple of them out there. Go check the partner site to go and look what they are. I know we are actually in the process of writing a new one with another distributor for one of our direct sale customers as well, just to FYI. And custom, that would require a special DLL, I believe is how they would give that to you all. But this is how you would do an import if you are, in fact, doing an interface. I think MBM we have an interface with. Don't quote me on that. Go check the partner site. Okay? And I'm just going to go ahead and cancel that. And you can close it after you choose whatever choice you want. If I like this, I can hit save. Or I can cancel it out completely because somebody comes in and says, didn't you check the book? I already put the order in. And so I'm going to go ahead and hit save. So now what you're going to see here, this big blank space is actually where all of your purchase orders will show themselves up. So there's our purchase order that we just put in today. All right. So that being said, let me just go through this. Ask the Inventory Manager. So this here is all about manipulating what shows up in this space. So right now I have got it showing up all active and back order POs. Maybe I just want to see all closed POs. So this is just a way of sorting out what you want to look at for your orders. Okay, come on. All right, this is the virtual piece of this, not wanting to play nicely right now. There we go. We'll do all. And let it just sort itself out. You can sort by type. I can say orders. I can sort by orders for, pick a specific supplier, and for a specific day. So again, another sort option going on there. And right now this is just, again, it's the graphics with the virtual machine. That's why it doesn't want to show. So here you can see, because I said to show all orders. There's my active order, and here's one that I canceled. Okay? So now that I've received one, now you have the choice of revising it. So maybe there's something about that purchase order I have to change. So it brings it back up to me so I can change it. Okay? And I'm going to cancel the changes on that one because I obviously I didn't make anything. Receive it. So this will allow me then to receive the order. So again, validating that all of this is good, then all I'm going to do is hit Receive PO. And I'm actually going to go ahead and do it. Process the inventory, yes or no? Yes, I am. Okay. Input new stock. This is what you do when you first set up your inventory or you're first adding something new. Typically, you're creating a fake PO. If you're coming into a restaurant that's already up and running and they don't have inventory set up, we basically need to go through and do an inventory of everything they have. And we need to put that in the system so it has that starting point. So what you're basically doing is creating a fake PO. So I would create a supplier called in-house already. And I'm going to say this is coming in from the main, this is, the main warehouse. Okay? And then you just add this to just like a regular PO. That's all you're doing. You're adding it just like you'd create a regular PO. You'd add it all in, and then you would go ahead and receive it. Okay? You would just receive it there because that's the starting off of everything you have in your system. Okay? And that's also what this button here does. Okay? Auto PO. This is where if you're going to allow auto PO, they can click on that, and that will automatically bring in a PO. And then you can tell it, select from the following. Is it, again, if you did warehouse specific, which warehouse are you taking it in from? What was the ship date that was on it? Include forecast to ship date. So again, auto ordering here, this is going to create that auto order. And if you are using future or forecasting or future orders, if you will, include forecasting up to ship date. So again, going off of the PAR information, if they're going to forecast out how much that you might use theoretically, would they include that into the amount that they were going to order? So let's say we're at 85 eggs, and my egg reorder limit is 80. Do they believe between now and when that order is going to be received, which is maybe 3 days, that we will end up using up the extra 5 eggs? So are we going to up the, am I going to add eggs to my order? Because maybe I wouldn't. As of today, I wouldn't add eggs to the order because I have 85. But by, say, next Tuesday, I could possibly use those extra 5 eggs. So now I might want to forecast to add that case to or that crate to it. Okay? That's the auto ordering functionality there. Finding PO, again, is the same as searching using these parameters here, or print it, same as finding it and then also printing it. Okay? Stock levels. So this is basically, what do I currently have? It's like a nice little snap of what right now. I'm not doing an inventory or anything like that. My business is up and running, and I just want to have an idea generally, what do I have now? Because maybe I'm getting ready to put a PO together. So based on current real-time information, with Stockboy again running in the background and my servers out on the floor ringing up their orders, what does it look like my current order levels are? For each of the different items, again, we have our warehouses here. We have what our report categories they come from. And this is telling me basically that I have 0 of any of these options. For mayo, I have 1 box of mayo, which I'm doing it as 1 box of mayo, which equals 360 ounces. I'm negative in my potatoes. So for some reason, I have no potatoes because I made that big old batch recipe of it. So I've used up any potato I possibly had. And again, because I didn't set the negative down, so it didn't go to 0. It's showing me a negative. For chicken pieces, I have 7 bags, and again, it's a piece per bag. So I have 7 bags, and there's 7 pieces per bag, so I have 63 pieces of chicken right now in-house. And I'm negative on my olives. I have no idea why. Again, we're playing games. All right. So roughly, you can also see now that your item costs, your cost per unit, your value, and what your inventory total value is right now. So my inventory right now on hand is roughly worth $99.78. Again, that's based on those weight averages that we set up back in setup in the inventory manager in Stockboy. Okay. Now, moving up and moving down, this is important. This here ties into your count sheets. And you'll print your count sheets out, obviously, to take counts of your items. When you come back into the system to want to enter in all those count sheets, you want them to flow in the same order. So this gives you the ability to arrange these any way you want. So most places will do counts based on location. So I have my main freezer, I have my main cooler, I have my main bar, my weight area, etc. Where items, for the most part, live. So you can use your up and down buttons here. So I want to move potatoes down because potatoes live where my eggs live for whatever reason. You can use this to sort this in any way you want it, and then when you print your count sheet out, it will print exactly in the same order. Because your stock level window and your physical count window are basically the same. So anything I do there affects here. So notice I move my potatoes next to my eggs, and they also show here as well. Okay. So it's the same thing there. So now when you're taking this is where you actually put in your physical counts. You have 2 places you can put in physical counts. I'm going to show you this here from the back office, the comfort of an office, supposedly in a nice chair. You can enter it in, again, on all 3 units of measure. So I could go in and say for chicken breasts, I have a box, and I have 3 bags. And maybe I also have 4 loose pieces. And that's going to tally that up for me. And it's already showing me I have a variance. Or if I just want to do just general physical units, and I got to break this down by the unit of measure on this side of things. So maybe for olives, I count them individually for whatever reason, Lord only knows. I have 68 olives. So now it's telling me that I have a variance of 73. So you can do it, again, as whole numbers here, broken down by their lowest unit, or you could do it by any one of the 3 measuring options that you have. Okay? And you just go in, you put those in. One thing right now we're showing physical, so that variance is basing it off of a physical. I could also hit Show System, and then that's going to show me what the system is. It's basically showing me theoretical. So my variance is going to change now based on theoretical. So if I open up that window a little bit more for you guys, you can see here, here's my physical, and here's my variance. All right, so you have 2 options. I'm going to make sure that updated properly. Again, the virtual, I'm having a little bit of a paint issue. So physical, variance by this many. Okay, if I take off system, so you'll see the difference there. So this is what we physically think we ought to have. the system thinks we ought to have. And physical is what you actually say you do have. Okay? So once you put all that in, then you want to process your variance. So this is going to lock it down. Are you sure you want to process? Yes, I am. So then it's going in and it's making those adjustments, and it's going to tell you where you were on and where you were off. And then from this point forward, we're going to make that assumption that anything you physically put in is what we're going to start with. So any numbers that were off, we're now starting with the numbers you've just given the system. And that right there also, remember that one flag setting and setup, as soon as I do that, did I tell the system as soon as I process that variance to then go ahead and take off, automatically resume stock depletion. So as soon as I process that variance, it now automatically turns stock way back on again, if you will. I shouldn't say turn it on, but it's allowing it to actually work. It's allowing it to actually start pulling out again. Okay, so again, if I go into my stock levels, it's basically readjusted all my numbers. And mind you, I didn't touch potatoes, so that's why I'm still in the negative. Readjusted all my numbers, and from this moment forward, I'm saying this is what I have, and so anything you add to me and anything you use out of me is we're going to add and subtract from that base number you just gave me. Okay? So there's stock. Transfers is allowing you to transfer from one warehouse to another warehouse. So again, if you have the commissary and you're going to transfer out from the main commissary down into the sports bar, you can do the transfer through that. And it's just like a PO. It's the same exact functionality as building a PO. Okay? Adding batch recipes. So one thing that the system, maybe for inventory purposes, we need to inventory our batch recipes. So again, you would tell it what warehouse, if you will. And a lot of places they don't necessarily have it as a warehouse. It doesn't really matter. I mean, you could create your pantry as a warehouse, but I wouldn't recommend it. Where in theory is that item going to be held in? What is the actual inventory item? So it's potato salad. And enter the batch quantity. So I'm going to say that I just did my count, and because I had to throw a batch out, I only have 2 batches now. My inventory is 2. And okay, add 2 batches, or actually, so this is actually adding back into inventory. So I just finished making potato salad. Pardon me, guys, I got confused for a second. I just finished making potato salad, and now I need to add that potato salad into inventory. So I'm adding 2 batches of inventory, 2 batches of potato salad into my inventory. Tongue-tied here this morning. All right, so my other thing I was trying to say is add spillage and waste. So maybe what I also need to do is after I made some, I realized that for my potato salad, there was 1 batch that was spoiled. I made 2 because there was 1 batch that was spoiled. And I can put in here spoiled, if I can type. And okay, so add 1 spillage and spoiled batch. Yep, so now that would have pulled it out. So I added 2 and I pulled 1 out. So that's how you're going to go in and you can add batch recipes into inventory, and you can also account for waste. And that's not just for batch recipes, gang. You can do that for anything. You know, there's a half a case of chicken that spoiled, or a carton of eggs that got dropped and destroyed, etc. So that's where you would utilize that for. And again, you'll notice here stock item and stock supplier is the same as what we did over in the main menu. Recipe setup. Here's another place where you can set up your recipes. But some people like doing it this way. Instead of going to product setup and going to each individual product item, you have all of your products here, and you can just go down the list and set up your recipe here. And it's the same as what you did over there. So for whatever reason, I'm going to say my pineapple has a piece of chicken. Okay, and then you get the same ratio where you can do measured cost, etc., because it does bring over, you'll notice here, prices A, B, C, D, E. It brings over what those prices are, so you can, again, determine what your cost is versus your profit. Okay, so that's another way that you can also do your recipes. I personally like doing it here. Plus, you can also sort it by your categories, so you can make sure, instead of just doing generic, you can get each of your individual categories, and you don't have to pick your hamburger and then go to the setup tab for each individual one. It makes it a little faster when you're setting them up. All right, so there's our recipe setup. Windows is just showing active windows. Help is help, and programs doesn't apply. So speaking of help, again, strongly recommend you guys go into your back office and you look at your help documentation. In inventory is a whole listing of what all these accomplish, plus inventory order of programming, just like we sent out the system order of programming. What order should you do all this stuff? So again, just to be realistic about it, you should create your suppliers first. Create your report categories, create your suppliers, create your warehouse. Then start talking about how you want to deplete stuff. Then do your stock items, recipes, etc. So it walks you through the whole thing, including how you start up for the first time, inputting the new stock, how you begin all the steps, and how you do this. Okay. One word of note is if your site is not using, a restaurant that you're setting up is not using Stockboy, they talk about, well, at some point we want to do inventory, but we're not ready yet. Do not turn on Stockboy until you are ready to use it. Because what this does is it collects these files. It keeps a record of every item that is pulled out of the system. And until you process that inventory, it just keeps building up those records and building up those records. Because once you process inventory, then it says, aha, we can deplete and I'm done. But it will bog down the system, and there's some settings within it that eventually you'll get error messages that says that the file is too full. Stockboy will start throwing off those messages, and it just bogs down the system. So don't turn it on until you're absolutely ready to use it. So during that whole setup time frame, when you're building out the recipes and you're entering in the product guides and everything else, do not activate it until you truly are ready to begin using it. Okay? So that is inventory, folks. All right, so let's take our break. It is 9 minutes after the hour, so I'll see everybody back at 4 minutes after the hour. Okay, everybody, welcome back. Now we're going to go in and finish off cash management. All right, so I was bopping around because I wanted to get something in here for cash management. So cash management is similar to inventory in that it's the inventory of all monies in the store. It's a nice way for them to be able to keep track of what's going on, where it's going on. So for instance, when you're thinking about all the different places that you can hold on to money, think about kind of like your warehouses. So there are going to be safes. You can have any number of safes that you want in the system. Maybe they have multiple safes. So again, in that hotel environment, there might be a safe in the fine dining area. There's a safe in the sports bar, etc. And then for every location, besides having safes, they could also have a cashier safe. Cashier safes are something where maybe like for all those preset cashier drawers, you would have all the drawers inside of that, and then how much each individual drawer has. So if every drawer is set up as a $200 bank, you maybe have 4 of them. You have a cashier safe, a cash drawer safe of $800. Some places that do server banking, but they also provide the servers the bank. You could have a server banking safe where you hang on to all that. And again, maybe you provide your servers a bank of, say, $50, and you have 10 of those. So you want to accommodate, account for that, $500. So you can create a safe for all of those different entities. All right. So again, we have our drop-down menus towards the top, and then we have our quick icon buttons, if you will, underneath that. So for manager, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to set up your cash levels. So this is going to allow me to go into each of my different areas, and I'm going to tell the system how much I have. So in my also, and you'll notice here I can do by all saves, I can do strictly by cash drawer saves. Break it down for every different type of safe that you have in your system. So I'm going to say I'm going to do this for my cash drawer saves. Oops. I don't want to do all saves. Yeah, we'll just do all saves for now. Sorry, guys. I'm bouncing today. Well, I'm trying to bounce. Oh, petty cash. Let's go back to safe here. Okay, so all saves. So I have currently, and this has to do with also setting up by denominations. So this is telling me how much I have listed in each of these right now. Okay, payment denominations. Now this takes us back to our cash payment tab, which I don't know if you remember when we set up cash, but in here is where you can go ahead and set up your payment denominations. This doesn't just affect your safes, mind you. This also affects the front of the house. So when your bartender clocks in and assigns some stuff to the cash drawer and it asks him what his float is, you have that choice of not having denominations. This asks you for a generic amount, or it comes up with this screen. Everything you program in here is what comes up, and then it's going to ask him to enter in how many 50s, 20s, 10s, etc. Also, if it's a banknote or a coin, or if you're counting it based on the number of items, so I'm counting how many $20 bills I have, or I'm counting how much in $20 bills I have. If you change it here, it will change it for what they see at point of sale. So we don't have 2 separate cash denomination windows, if you will. There isn't one set up for the safe and cash management and another one set up for front of the house. One of the areas where it gets a little confusing is when you're dealing with coin. A lot of times with coin, you want your bartenders just to count out total coins. Or maybe you might even go as far as having them count out by dimes, nickels, quarters, and pennies. If you're doing it from the back end, you might want to track. You don't have loose change in the back typically, but you probably have rolls of coin. So it's something you kind of want to think about when you're setting this up. Okay? So once you set up your different levels, your past denominations, then you're going to set up, you'll also see that you can set up your options. We have our filters. So end of day filter, 7 days. So how many days after end of day can I fix things? So Saturday and Sunday nights are crazy. Maybe I don't have a chance to go do the audit. How far backwards can I go and make those adjustments? So if I don't balance out or record what happened on Saturday and Sunday until Wednesday, do I have enough time in there to actually go backwards? Deposit filter days, how many days worth of deposits do I want to see at any given time? Use denominations full description, yes or no. So do I want it to be the entire description in the system, or do I just want it to be the value? Cash out over short amount, what am I allowed for a over short? When does, in my cash outs, when do we get flagged, or what's the minimal allowable overage in short, or maximum allowable over in shorts? Confirm move all. That's a new function. Confirm move all. Determines whether to confirm the movement or transfer of all cash. Am I confirming if I'm moving it from, like, transferring from warehouse, if you will, moving it from one location to another location? Autofill settlement amount. Do I automatically assume the settlement amount on the keypad? It's almost like it takes away that blind drop, if you will. It is telling me what the system says you should have, and am I going to assume that that is what I'm going to fill in? Or do I want that turned off and I want to fill it in myself? Okay, and we get into deposits, safe. So let's do the safe first, because I think that makes more sense before we get into the deposits. So when you're dealing with your safe, you want to, what are your balance levels? How much do you have in each of these to account for? So how much in each cash store? So again, I'm in my safe management, my cash store safe. How much do I have in each of those? Okay. Then you have your transfer of funds. So maybe I'm taking money out of my training safe and I'm moving it into my general safe. Paid in and paid out. So if you don't do them out on the front side, if you're not doing them at the register, you're doing them back here. And it's the same functionality as we did from the front side, adding a paid in. Why? So when I do a paid in, and when you set your safes up initially, you're going to do an initial deposit paid in. But you can add, again, reasons for why you're doing a paid in or a paid out through here. So maybe you're paying your window washer from this, or your newspaper guy from this area. So you create those different individual paid in and paid out reasons. Okay. If I'm going to set up an initial deposit, I'm going to go ahead and say initial deposit. The first time I open things up, it's sort of like that start stock, input new stock. And again, here are my choices from my denominations. So I'm going to say that I have 150. Oops, sorry. We are doing this, and I wasn't paying attention. Cancel that. Let's try that again. Initial deposit. So 50s. Enter amount. We're doing these by the amount. We're not doing it by the quantity. So I'm going to say I have $50. That's my initial deposit. I can do another one. Oh. And for 20s, I'm going to say that I have 120s. Paid in, initial deposit, and I have 200 singles, so on and so forth. All right, so those are all my paid-ins, and I'm going to process those in. All right. So besides using the drop-down menu too, I should also show you guys, you have your icons right here. So if I go to, again, we'll go to my save, prepare a new deposit, there's my balancing it, transferring funds between, there's my paid in, my paid outs that I just did, and you can also set up for petty cash. If on the floor, you're also going to give them a little petty cash box. You can also set up for petty cash here as well. Okay, and then you'll see here where you have your petty cash and your floats. And again, those are separate, so each of them, you also would balance your levels, you would transfer in your funds, and you do your paid in and your paid outs. Okay, so that's basically how you set up your monies inside of each. And that's all held within safes, including being able to add a safe or edit a safe. Okay, so then when it comes to your deposits, prepare your bank deposit. So when it comes to me preparing my deposit, it's going to come up and it's going to ask me all my denominations. I can put in reference numbers. So a lot of your deposit bags have a number on them, so you probably want to take whatever number is on the bag. Deposit via is a courier service. In my world, is a service picking it up, or is it John going to the bank? And you can add your list of how is this getting deposited. Are we driving through, or is this a nighttime deposit? We're going to drop it off in the deposit slot, etc. So I'm going to say it's going to be a courier service. And again, you can put in a generic reference code, whatever is your system tends to use, if you link it to your general ledger account in some way, shape, or form, or something to do with your actual checkbook or whatnot. Okay? So I'm going to say, and again, I could choose it from a specific safe, or I could choose from all safes, so this is like to be a global deposit. And I can go ahead and select on the items to determine what I'm going to send over. So I'm going to say that I'm going to send over. Now notice, this is how many, as opposed to dollars. I always want to look in the top of your windows to figure out which is you're entering your denomination by. So we're going to be depositing 150 $50 bill. We are going to deposit. And again, notice what safe this is pointing at because I'm choosing all safes. So I'm taking 50 out of the cash drawer, and I'm going to take 20 out of Scott's. And then from my cashiers, I'm going to take 50. Now, mind you, notice how it's defaulting to the numbers that are here, but I'm choosing how much I actually want to do. So now my deposit is $120. And again, this is the same as with the PO. You can print it, so you have your choice of previewing it. So this is what a deposit slip is going to look like. And notice it knows who I am. You can preview it, print it, or send it. And again, you get the same links to doing it to a PDF or doing it to a Word file. And again, I'm not right-clicking. I am just left-clicking on that particular button. I can choose to deposit it later, or I can say I'm going to deposit it now. So I'm going to say I'm going to deposit that later. And I'm going to say later, yes, because maybe I'm preparing it, but someone else is going to take it. The courier service hasn't picked it up yet, but I just prepared the deposit for them. So now that would have gone into the individual safes that I adjusted, because remember I picked who I was taking it from and show what they have. So again, I could go to my cash levels, and then I can see all my safes, etc. So I can go to Scott's safe, and I can now see what his safe has been adjusted to. I took away his 20s, and I took away, he didn't have any 50s in this one. The cash drawer safe had the 50, and I took that away. This is where you're going to see what your overall values are. And I could do all of the above, and that's going to show me everything. So in my world right now, I have a total of $520 on hand in any of my various safes, including my active deposit. Okay? All right. So then if I go back to General, where am I going? I was bopping around, guys. There it is. There's my deposit. So I can open up my deposit. Oh, that's not one I did previously. First deposit, make deposit. I've lost my deposit. There it is. So there's the deposit that I put on hold for the courier. And again, you got to kind of watch where you're setting this up to so you can find where it is. And I can do a deposit now. So now the courier service came, picked it up, they gave me my receipt, and off to the bank it goes. Okay. Now the other thing you're going to see here is your end-of-day summary. So this is everything that I did. Now I just shut the system down, even though I know we brought this up on July, whatever it was, 29th. I actually went through my end-of-day. So this is now going to show me, if I double-click on it, all of my employee cash outs, all of my cash out details, and my payment summaries. This is a little off because, again, I ended my day on the 5th, but I did this way back on July 29th. Normally, you will see in here all of the actions, all of the money's actions that took place for the day. That's why training is kind of goofy in this way. But it's going to show me, this will be a list of all of the actual cash outs that I did for the day, all their actual detailed summaries, and all the actual payment summaries. And again, I can sort based on whichever one that I'm looking at. Okay, that's kind of it. Let me see if there's anything else that I'm missing. In, out, petty cash, view. Nope, that's pretty much for cash management. That's about it in there. Guide, and I did not bring that up. Let me go and find that. Go onto the portal. There is a cash document that is all about cash management. I don't believe we have a webinar that's specifically about it, but here we go. There is a guide that is all about cash management that walks through, and obviously it's 32 pages, roughly probably 30 pages of 29 pages of content. But it walks through all of this in absolute detail and really explains each of the individual functionalities, how to set it up, any kind of policy settings that you need to adjust, etc. I strongly recommend if you're going to use it that you read through this because it will give you some pointers on some things to watch for and exactly the proper way of setting it up. And what some of the challenges might end up being, like I did with my end-of-day summary, starting the day at the end of July and not shutting down until September. Which isn't something a normal restaurant would end up doing, but just in case. All right, so I would definitely recommend that you guys go off and do that. All right. Oh, one thing I just remembered, I totally forgot. Inventory, I talked about there was 2 places you could put your inventory in when you're finally ready to take the physical count. Again, back office, relaxing, sitting in a comfortable chair. The other option is there's an executable in your POS folder called inventory count, Pixel Inventory Counts. You can put the shortcut on the actual POS system on one of the stations, and using the touch screen on the display, your staff can do it. So it's going to look for their code or their card. So when you first go into it, it's going to ask me, do I want to hold depletion now? So I'm going to say yes, because typically if you're doing a count, you want to stop depletion. So that's the third way that you can stop the depletion from happening. And this is just like that screen, but it's a little bit more user, I guess, pretty, if you will. And that they can go through, and then using their touch screen, they can go in and enter all the different counts. And you can see where you can resume depletion, you can process variance, and you can enter counts. So I want to enter the count for, say, my chicken breast. Highlight it, hit enter, and it brings up this nice little box. So they can go in there and they can put in what possibly it was. So maybe I have a bag and 2 pieces. It's behind the cooking line. And I can click OK. And I can just, again, using the touch screen, enter count. It's a little cleaner, if you will. It's not the list. So it's their choice. It's a second way of doing inventory. And I'll process my variance. Are you sure? Yes. And notice how this now toggles back to hold depletion. Okay, so that was the other option that you can do, A, to take inventory counts, and also to turn on and turn off depletion, holding the inventory counts. All right, that being said for that, now we're going to jump into Report Viewer. This is the new Report Viewer, the external Report Viewer, not to be confused with the internal Report Viewer that we still have. So let me just kind of walk you through the internal one first. So this hasn't changed. You still have your tree with your various pixel reports. All this can be edited. I can change folders. I can add folders. I can create what we call groups. So if I wanted to create a new group on here. So pixel reports, I'm going to create a new group. And I'm going to call it training reports. Again, if I can type. And now you see I have a new folder called training reports. And then to that folder, right-clicking, I can rename it, delete it. I can sort if I have multiple, ascending versus descending, etc. I can drag reports, so maybe I like that report in here. So it doesn't just, what it basically does is it copies the row. Oh, well, that didn't work. Come on. Work for me today. Don't be that way. There we go. It copies the report from one to the other. When you're running your reports, so let's see, I'm going to do a sales report. I'm going to do daily sales. You'll notice here you have detail and change printer. When you go into the report, not every report is set up this way, but as you play with the reports, you'll know that you can get them in a summary format or a detailed format. And some reports are already predetermined to be detailed. If you want to report in detailed format, click your detail button prior to. If you want to change the printer that it normally goes to, you don't want to use your Windows default printer, you want a different printer, you can go ahead and click on that. So now when I actually get into the report, double-clicking on it, those parameters are set for me. Now I get my calendar and I can choose any date that I want. So since, again, we were all over the place with our training on this, my sales are back on the 29th. So I can choose a start date and I can also then choose an end date. I can do the same date or maybe I want to do a couple more days. I'm going to look at a couple of days. And click OK. Processing. All reports by default come to the main screen, so you can view them prior to printing them. All right. When you get into the report, there's your print report. Print just current page. If this is a multi-page report, I just want the one that I have up on my screen. So as I was scrolling down, if I was in page 3, I hit print current, it would print page 3. Export. You can export the reports. Number of exporting possibilities. You can see everything in here. PDF, Adobe, Excel, etc. Once you choose to export, where do you want to export it? Again, what type of export? Typically, you probably do a disk. So it's going to save it to your hard drive. And OK. And it's going to ask me where do I want to save it to. Okay. Report groups. So I can go in here because I chose to do multiple days. Now I can actually pick out each day. So even though this particular report is showing me all the days listed, I could actually pick out if it didn't show me that kind of a detail, or maybe it was an 8-page report and there was a lot of information. So under the 29th, it had a whole page of information, and the 30th it had another whole page of information. This would allow the system then to jump down to the 30th as opposed to the 29th. Okay, first page, prior page, next page, last page, and leaving the report. Okay. Now you'll notice we lost some functionality here that we used to have because this is just the back office view of it. I think what we're basically going to be doing is eliminating that version of Report Viewer, and we're going to be going with this version of Report Viewer, the external. Right now it's still considered to be the external Report Viewer. So open him up. And again, I would set this up as a shortcut on the desktop. And it's going to ask you for your credentials to get in. Again, code your key in, swipe your card. All right. So you'll notice this has a completely different report tree. That tree of training reports I just added did not come out here. They're totally separate. So that's why I tend to have them use one or the other. I don't typically recommend you have them use both because you have to maintain both. The beauty of the report trees is that you can manipulate them and edit them. So if I'm working with a quick service environment, they don't need tables. They don't need any of the report categories maybe that deal with tables, or maybe they're absolutely never going to use inventory. So they don't want this tree here. Now keep in mind, when you delete a tree and the reports within a tree, or even if, say, they are going to use inventory, but they don't want all these choices for the reports, they only want, say, 5 of them, you remove them here. You are not deleting them off the system. They're still in the system. It's just that link for them to access them is no longer there. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're doing it. So here we have our menu tabs across the top here, our file options. So groups, so this is adding a new group, which was basically adding another folder or adding another folder within a folder. So again here, if I so chose, this is where I could go ahead and hit new. And I clicked on Pixel Report because I want it to be a part of the core tree. And I can call this training. And then you can also, for each of the individual folders, which is a new feature with this external view, you can set up a security level. Who is allowed to edit and delete within this tree? Who can add or remove reports from that tree? Or edit existing reports, so maybe edit the links to that report with its existing tree. So I may allow my managers to go in and review all that information, but it's only anybody who is an owner or a systems administrator that actually has security settings high enough that they could actually manipulate it. Okay, so there's my tree. All right, so editing it would be changing out the name of it, exiting is getting me out of this area, or deleting the group itself. Okay, reports. A new report, edit a report, delete a report. So I want to add a new report. So if I click new, it's going to bring me up our basic report view, if you will. So file. So now if you are going through, you have to have a Crystal report. If you guys write Crystal reports, copy them into the Pixel Report folder. This automatically will take me there. This is saying basically that I want to add a new report to this particular group. I'm going to add my sales summary report, and I'm going to click OK with that. By default, the name of the report is going to be what the file name is. So I maybe want to change that to match up to something that my customer is going to better understand. All right, security level. Who can run this report? Can anybody run this report, or again, do you need a specific security level in order to run that report? Security level to edit it, so running it versus editing the report. Input data, ask for a date range. If you want this report to allow you the option to choose what date range, then you want to check that box off. I tend to check that off for just about every report except for lists. Formulas and parameters, if there's anything unique that you want to change about how this report runs, I'm going to refer you guys to the version 12 release guide. Talks about the different parameters and whatnot when it comes to all of this. And the typical destination, Windows, email, Microsoft Exchange, or file. The standard is going to be Windows because that's going to give you the ability to print. But if this report is only ever going to be emailed out, again, that's something that you'd have to share with them. But keep in mind, you can take any one of the reports and you can use any one of these as destination outputs after the fact. But this is basically setting up like that pre-assumption. So instead of it pre-assuming I'm going to print this and bring it to the screen, it's going to pre-assume that I'm going to send it off as an email message. I'm going to click OK, and there's the report added to my training folder. Just like that. All right. All right. Run it is just running it, double-clicking on it. Print it would be, instead of bringing it to the screen right out of the off the bat, go ahead and print it. Okay. You'll see here we can add to a schedule. But before I can add to a schedule, I need to create a schedule. So some of the really cool tools here are, first of all, I'm showing detail and everything. So that's the default with the detail, whereas before we check the detail, this is assuming by default all reports show in detail. If I don't want all reports to show in detail, I'll uncheck it. It's a toggle. It'll take it off. We'll get to the query build in just a second. Schedules. We can set up schedules, and that's where this whole email piece comes into play, which is fabulous, or even printing. So you can create, say, an end-of-night report group. So I'm going to create a new schedule, and I'm going to call it end of day reports. And how do I want that to go? Do I want it to go to a file? And if so, which directory am I putting it in? Why are you giving me a little oomph? Come on. Oh, my. Now it's going to be a brat. Let's try that again. I'll leave it at new for now. I'll have to check that and see why that did that to me, guys. Where do I want it to default to? Maybe I'm going to create a folder on my drive. All my end-of-day reports go there. Or do I want to set it up as an email? If so, what email address am I sending it to? Okay, so folder or email. Current period, so do I want the day of, week of, month, or date range? What is the reporting period that I'm working on? Okay, and I'm going to click OK. So now I've created the schedule. So now I can go back here and I can say add to schedule. Click on the report so you want to add to a schedule. So if you have multiple schedules listed here, you're going to pick which schedule you want that report to be a part of. And now that's a part of that. That's a part of that schedule. Okay. So one of the things that you can do when you get into here is edit this. And you can see, again, you can change your outputs if you want to change your outputs. If it's like a weekly report, again, most of the times you probably stick within current period or previous period. Again, nightly reports you're probably going to do in the current period for the most part. Now, we want to actually make this a scheduled task. So instead of somebody launching it when they want it, we actually want to add it to the task scheduler. So you click on that, and I can go in here and say, okay, I want this depending on either days of the week or days of the month. If I want every single day, check off every single day, or maybe this is something that I only get on Sundays, etc. Or I get it on the 15th of the month if it's a payroll situation. And what time do I want this to run at? When do I want this to run? Maybe I want this to run in the a.m. at 3 o'clock. So every morning at 3 a.m., the system is going to email me this particular report. What this did was it went into the Windows schedule task, and it created a schedule in here. So there it is. So it went in here and it created it for me, instead of you having to come in here and actually creating it yourself. Okay? So that is one of the neat new features that we have going on here. The other feature that I love is show reports not in tree. We have so many reports. And again, I want to remind you guys, all these new reports that were added via version 12 have not been added to the system trees. We did not want to overwrite any of the trees that are already in place because a lot of people have custom trees. As soon as you create new groups or add and remove reports on any individual system, you have now edited the tree and they now have a unique tree. So by us, in the course of the upgrade, going in and adding all these, we would, in fact, be affecting, for any upgrade stores, what's already in place. So to see any report not in the tree, and that's not just these new reports, that's any report that is on your system in that Pixel Report folder that has been taken off or removed from their tree is now going to show in this list. So every single report. Okay, just give it a minute for my screen to refresh here. So all the reports not in the tree. Now mind you, we're not going to hold off on that thought. So one of the things that I love about this, so for instance, actual versus scheduling. If you right-click on one of these reports, you can preview it. So you can get the report to load up so that you can look it over to determine if, in fact, it's something you do or don't want. So again, because we haven't really set them all up, some of them are going to say missing parameters, but you're going to get the option to enter in those parameters. And it's not necessarily something that you would have had to do once you set the report up, but because we're basically testing it, I need to do it. So you can go through, you can pick the different values, exclude salaried employees, yes, and OK. And I think it's pretty logical. Whenever you get some of the ones that come up saying missing parameters, it's pretty logical what it is you need to fill into it. And again, if you pick dates that you actually have data for, you are going to see real data. So it gives you the option to preview it beforehand and determine, do I want it or don't I want it? And if I do want it, then I can go ahead and I can take it and I can just drag it to the group that I want it in now, which I just think that's bloody brilliant. So mind you, my system is still refreshing itself, so just sit tight for a second. So now that I've moved it there, now it's asking me all these other questions as if I had added this manually. So do I want to leave the name? You know, notice it took the SQL out of the name, because a lot of us, we forget to do that piece. And you can name it any way you want, the description. So it gives a nice little description of what it is. You can set up your security levels on who can run it and who can edit it. And again, your input. So again, I would always check off ask for date ranges. And if you want to change up your formulas, this is where you change up your formulas. And again, what is the default output? So again, typically, I think Windows, again, think in terms of printing, is going to be your default output, and OK. So now that is set up with those parameters in my folder. So one of the things, too, you're going to see here is that we have some new icons, if you will. So here's where you can take, I can, at this point, as I'm, and it didn't matter that I moved it or I ran it here as a preview. These functionality icons happen if I would actually run a report that's already added to a tree or added to the group. Even though I'm viewing it, now here's my chance to export it. Here's my chance to print it. Here's my opportunity to print just the current page, refresh it, toggle the group tree. So again, that was the ability to have it so it'll pick up the different days or what the different options were that I had listed over there. So by clicking it again, that's going to close that off. If there was multiple pages, so again, this is just one page of one, but if there was 10 pages, I'm moving to the first page, last page, and then through it individually in page. Finding something specific. Maybe I'm looking for a specific, let's see, punch time. Finish searching. So I had a punch time here, it would show me what it was if I actually had something there. Zooming in and out on the report so I can choose what I view it as. Okay, and then also now, because you can actually have multiple reports loaded. So for instance, if I now go ahead into sales and we're going to do, let's say, sales summary. And I'm going to pick a day that I want. It will go ahead and load that. It's going to load each of the reports on top of one another. So in the past, you could only look at one report at a time. You couldn't toggle between reports to validate information, or you're trying to troubleshoot. And you're like, wait, on this report it looks like that, but on that report it looks like that. Now this will allow us to do that. I'll just give that a moment. Of course, I picked a report that actually runs quite a bit. The summary reports actually siphon through a variety of batch files, so it's looking for all that information right now. Come on. Come on. Definitely not the right report to pick for this little example right now. When it finally finishes loading, you're going to see back here another tab, and it's going to have the tabs for each of the different reports. And then you can toggle between which one you want to look at, and then you have your X over here where you can then choose which report you want to close. And that's on all the reports now. So when you want to actually stop viewing a report, when you're done previewing it, instead of the close button that we have at the bottom typically, you would go ahead and just hit the X when you were finished looking at that particular report. And mine's not happy right now. I apologize, guys. That definitely wasn't the report to try to run on the virtual right now. As you can see, it's still cooking. I may end up killing it just so we can move forward. I think I will. So we have one more area in this that I really want to get through before the end of today's class. So I'm going to go ahead and kill that. I apologize, guys. Okay. The last thing, and this is the thing that everybody is really excited about, and I'm absolutely going to refer you back to the product, the release guides for this as well, is the query builder. This allows you to create your own queries and add columns, delete information, resort, etc. It does not allow you to create new reports. It allows you to create new exports. So the beauty on that is with so many people wanting things edited out, they want it in Excel or PDFs, etc. They want to be able to sort. So for instance, I was playing with this earlier, so one of the reports I had already picked and I played with was my employee list, or actually the employee payroll report. Let's do the report. No, I don't want that one. I will do the list again. So my list, I have, oh, come on, list of active lists. Now notice, mind you, the query choices. These are all the different choices that I have and the different fields that are associated with. So if I'm creating a special employee list, I can remove any of these. I can add new columns if I so chose. So if I click Add, I can choose maybe I also want to have their payroll ID number in there, and then it's going to show me what table that's linked to. So it kind of also gives you a better understanding of what the SQL tables look like and what the different columns in the SQL tables are. Talking about their full name, first name, last name, or full name, last name, first name. So it gives you that ability to go in here. If you're using employee user-defined fields, you can now add them to the report, and like by their value or et cetera and so forth. So that gives you the ability to put all that in there. So maybe, and again, here's everything that we have, every SQL column / table that we have out there. You now have the ability to go in there and add it. So maybe I want to put in here last is clocked in. I'm adding that now to this particular report. Okay. Query conditions, these are all the different SQL statements that go with it and how they query. Definitely go through the release notes to understand what all of this verbiage and all the different commands and whatnot do stand for. This is a bit, it would behoove everybody to have a little bit of SQL understanding so you understand what some of these statements are. Okay? And then once you build what you want, so maybe for instance, I'm going to take off, I can delete it, I can sort it, I can move it up, I can move it down. I'm just going to go ahead and move it down. For reasons unbeknownst, I want that at the bottom. I want that right here. Then you can go to results, and you're going to see what your output's going to look like. You can get an idea of how this is going to look. And typically, I would figure you're probably going to want to export these in probably to Excel, so that you can search and sort and do whatever you want to do with it. But you can actually see what you've actually created when you do that. Okay, so there's your query builder. So now here you have your choice of new, edit, save, remove, refresh, so on and so forth. So I'm going to save that. So that is now for my employee list. This is what my employee list looks like. Okay, again, if I want to do a new one, then I can choose the model that I want to. Typically recommend that you copy an existing one and then start playing with it. So the data model on this is that name, but maybe I'm going to call this, the query name on it is test employee list. and OK. Okay, so now here I am, and now I can start adding and removing columns. So I've created my brand spanking new one, even though I've modeled it off of the original, so that's why all these options are available for me. So maybe I want their name first, then I'm going to choose their phone number. Okay, we'll find something I can actually see, POS name, and so forth. Okay, so the query builder, fabulous. And do I want to save it? Yes or no? I'm going to say yes. So that is the new report viewer and all the functionality that it has, and then some. I definitely recommend you play with this. Play, 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 play. It has so much to offer. All right? And on that note, we are 5 minutes of the hour, so let's go ahead and open this up to some questions.
Hi, Donna. We've got 2 questions, or actually 1 question in the queue right now. The first question, what are the security level assignment capabilities to control counts between theory and actual? And there is a follow-up to that. This is to ensure that one person can't accept differences and wash them out.
Off the top of my head, I honestly don't know. But what I'm going to say we do is we go into our security setup. And let's see, inventory. Inventory user-defined fields. So here is all of the different security levels that pertain to inventory. Accessing it, being able to add batch recipes, spillages, changing POs, deleting POs, inputting stock, new POs, physical counts. So in order to input a physical count, you have to, again, by default, you have to be 75. I do not see an option in here for between entering it and then editing after the fact. That I do not see as an option. So this is the first place I would look. And again, I see where it shows the variance. So maybe I can input. So you could very well have your bartenders do the inputting because they're the ones that probably took the count anyway. But they don't actually get to see the system or the variances on the system. So there's the one place I would look. The other place I would start sorting through would be the various policies. I would look through policies to see if there's anything specific to inventory. Let's do counts. And this is, guys, this is kind of being your own detective. There's customer counts, et cetera. So I would say this is where I would start looking. I don't know of anything off the top of my head where, and I do see what you're saying. I mean, one person can put it in. So maybe I have my bar manager who's putting in all my inventories, and he realizes his bar costs are too high, so he wants to go back and fudge it so that he can't make them look nice. So you might want a secondary security level for editing of that. Same to me for punch records. I kind of think time clocks is the same, where one person can add it in, but for them to go back and adjust it a second time. I don't know that we have that functionality, quite honestly. I would say start looking through the policy settings, and if not, that would be a lovely SCR. All right, next question.
That's all that we have in the queue for right now.
That's a lot of information to digest, and I know, guys, I really, a lot of this has got to be, we can only cover so much, if you will. I mean, it really is an overview of a lot of this stuff. For the details on this stuff, absolutely look at your setup information. There's a lot of really good information in the books. Again, you sort it out by what you're looking for, so it's very intuitive that way. Also on the partner portal, search out. So I would go on the partner portal and just type in inventory and look in all of the materials and see what it has. If there's webinars, if there's documentation. That's how I found the cash management one. That's how I found there was a whole special document just for cash management, which I didn't even know existed. So I definitely recommend that you go through that and look at all the different resources that you have. All right. Anything else?
Nope, nothing in the queue.
Okay. All right, guys. Well, wow. We covered a lot today, and that was some pretty heavy topics. So we are done with everything back here, gang. I'm going to give you some more time to type in, but we've done everything in product, everything in mail, inventory covered, all of the functionality of employee, everything to do with members has been covered, general setup. The one thing I'm hesitant on is data miner. I've been told that we are discontinuing data miner, so I'm going to kind of move that towards the end. If I end up having time, at the end of the sessions, then I'll do a quick overview of Data Miner, but right now I'm going to kind of hold on it because we're really pushing the report viewer instead. We've done everything in table setup, admin. The same goes with Web2Go setup. Web2Go is being defunct. So for any store that has it, yes, we're supporting it, but going forward, we're not. I believe I've been told we're not selling it moving forward. So I'm going to kind of hold off on Web2Go as well because I need to add in a whole other section with some of the new version 12 functionality that just came out. When we started this session, we were still using version 12.2. We're now up to version 12.4. So there's some brand new functionalities, including a brand new security tab that was just added. I just got the updated files, believe it or not, 15 minutes before our class today. So there's some new functionality that I need to put some time aside to cover with you guys. So that's everything in admin. We've done everything through here. So when next we meet, we're going to get into the files. And we're going to talk about some of these other executables. Like I said, I pulled out the 2 inventory ones. I'll talk about KDS. We'll talk about overtime agent, et cetera, and just a little bit about the entire file structure and how this all works. So for the support guys, that might be something you're all interested in as well. All right. So if nothing else is coming to the queue, I say we end this today. And I'll see everybody back here.
Nothing in the queue.
All right, we're good then. So let's have everybody back next Tuesday, and next week is our last week, based on my count. So we'll get ready to wrap it up. So we'll probably get to the point next week where we open it up to just overall general questions and stuff that maybe you thought about after the fact, as opposed to keeping the questions limited to just the current day topic. All right? So everybody have yourself a fabulous weekend. Leslie, thank you so much. And good day, everybody.
Thanks, Donna.